I think also growing up, I never saw my story. A lot of people will say, hey, you know, that story reminds me of me or my family or whatever. I never saw my story, and so I felt like I had to start writing some of those stories down, and so that's how I got into writing. So I'm going to read a few pieces that are older, and I'll read some newer stuff, and we'll just go from there. My mom is here. My mom and my two aunts and my brother are all here. Thank you for coming. One of the memories that I have as a child was going down to see my grandparents in Indianapolis, my mom's parents. And they started a project called Beggars for the Poor, in which they brought food and necessities, clothing, etc., to homeless people. And one spring break, I got to go with them. And this was something that I remember one individual in particular, one homeless man in particular. So I wrote this poem called Eugene. I was a 12-year-old stick figure of a boy. He was a mountain of a man, larger than the city's skyline. I still find myself searching for Eugene, somewhere in this small world of big cities. It was spring break to some, to others just another day lived out in slow motion. I was a 12-year-old stick figure of a boy. He was a mountain of a man. I have long since forgotten the details of his face, lost in the puddled streets of Indianapolis. It became a blur in the shadow of monuments to soldiers and sailors that anchored the city's downtown, sending streets to a swirling end. The memory of his face drowned in the flooded banks of the White River where he slept at night. It disappeared in the shadows of the overpass, the freeway between this city and every home I've ever had. Lost the memory of his face somewhere in the passing windows of a teenager's brain in transit between boyhood and manhood. But I could never forget his name, Eugene. Could never shake it, despite all the other names I had ever known and lost, have spoken and ignored. Can't remember the names of all my cousins, friends, lovers, school teachers, co-workers. Sometimes I can't unearth my own name, but I can't forget his, Eugene. Can't remember the last time I ever said the word aloud, Eugene, or ever told anyone I remembered. Just carried it with me like my last worldly possession, like a concealed weapon. I was a 12-year-old stick figure of a boy. He was an old mountain of a man in a city that swallowed him and spit me out. This spring break, a visit to the grandparents, a week of independence, and the one thing I was most excited about was not the museums, going out to eat, the hip uncle who played bass guitar, listened to U2, The Who, and Elvis Costello, or Grandma's peach pie. It was the homeless people who floated through the city streets as light and relevant as yesterday's newspapers. My imagination reminds me that it rained that morning, that it was sticky, humid that day, that the city's skyline loomed in the distance, that this back alley smelled like pee, the kind of smell 12-year-old boys get a kick out of. My imagination tells me that they were all there waiting for us, like something out of a Ray Bradbury movie I would see years later. Hungry, glazed eyes, waiting for the accident to arrive. My grandparents and I, disguised as beggars for the poor, in a white van, charity's chariot stuffed with second-hand clothing, men's suits, socks wider than mine had ever been, underwear, collared shirts a 12-year-old kid wouldn't be caught dead in, stuffed with sandwiches, coffee, razor, and soap, stuffed with the ghost of 100,000 Hail Marys, Our Fathers, the Apostles' Creed, a 12-year-old stick figure of a boy and two white-haired Irish elders, the poster children for charity. I was a 12-year-old stick figure of a boy. He was a mountain of a man. He cradled his cup of coffee closely as if the whole world were a monkey on his shoulder trying to snatch it from him. The black of his swollen fingers across the white of his cup, a checkerboard without kings. His skin the black of Mississippi summers or Detroit factory floors. Eugene carried every worldly possession in a once upon a time white, now soiled brown duffel bag, calls it home, yet no cop need a search warrant when breaking and entering in search of concealed weapons. It was a humid day, rain clouds threatening as those beat cops, shop owners, the common cold. But Eugene wears a deep blue woolen trench coat reminiscent of a dignified historical figure, a Union soldier from the 1st Black Regiment, exactly the kind of figure missing from the city monuments. He stuffs a head full of hair, a tangled bush with more naps than a kindergarten class, into a knit cap, stiff with sweat, rises in a series of sways, shuffles down the alley, invisible, unnoticed, like a human snuffleupagus, past the open door garage, where a radio blasts a teeny version of Al Green's Let's Stay Together. And I swear I heard him say, that's all I'm trying to do. That's all I'm trying to do. Now, some 20 years later, I still find myself searching for Eugene in the reflections of puddles, searching for Eugene not in the hungry glazed eyes, but in the stony stares of statues, not in the outheld hands, but those wrapped tightly around themselves. I find myself searching for Eugene somewhere in this small world of big cities. Oh my God. Audacity.
Find more people.
Good timing. This will end.
Well, it's a good thing it happened then.
Let me take this opportunity to remind you that if you have a cell phone,
Turn it off.
or an iPad, everybody give it up for Emmanuel. Here's another encounter that I had in another city. I went and visited the Bay Area before I lived out there, and had just gotten into town when I had this encounter in San Francisco. Anybody ever been to San Francisco? Okay, all right. Mission District, you can kind of see, very diverse, very urban area, lots of shops and whatnot. There's a couple references. Come on in. A couple references in here that I'll pass for those who aren't familiar with it. Pancho Villa's is actually a taco shop in the Mission District. There was, as I said, lots of restaurants. And that's really, let's see, I think what was the name of the street that I referenced? Van Ness is a street in San Francisco in the Mission District. So just so that you don't get lost when I reference them. This is called $5 Poem. An hour into San Francisco, my head still spinning, my feet still wet and walking 6 inches off the ground. I'm a kid at a carnival, taking in the city sights and sounds, the rain, the trains, the taquerias. I know that Pancho Villa is around here somewhere. I can hear him calling my name. I was trying to find this taqueria. Hi, Teresa, come on in. Come on in. I know that Pancho Villa is around here somewhere. I can hear him calling my name. The fish markets where the aroma of the life of the sea fumbles through the open door and into the darkening air, thick as bodies from a phone booth. I am almost obliged to step around it apologetically. It is here in the Mission District on 16th, just off Van Ness, that you catch up with me, just past the Filipino restaurant without any vegetarian options. How you slip into stride with me, I do not know, but you do, long enough to say hello. And again, hello, because at first I do not hear you or do not realize you were talking to me, the man who knows almost no one in this city who would say hello. By the time my eyes find you and focus, the sun is setting, our shadows stretch like jazz notes, and somewhere on the other side of this street make a single song. The distance between myself and the rest of the world has come down to 2 feet, now firmly planted on the ground. You could be my sister, but you can't be more than 20. With your ambiguous brown hair, brown skin and curly hair. You could be from anywhere. Miami, Milan, Manila, Mumbai, Montreal. But right now you are right here, eyes as old as planets, mind swimming like oceans, your voice trained like a SWAT team to disarm me of $5. Before I know my hand has left my pocket, before I know a bill has left my hand. Behind you, pigeons laugh and strut. They've seen San Francisco's every episode. They know this is a rerun. They've got your next line down. Coo it with you. You want to come up to my place? And suddenly the traffic lights turn from green to red without yellow. The jazz music stops. Your words bounce off buildings, bending to hear you speak. San Francisco has known earthquakes, but my knees have not. They buckle at the vibration. It seems such an earnest invitation, casual, well-acquainted, acts as if it need not be translated, as if it were a first date, as if we've been friends forever, as if I even know your name, what country your skin comes from, what planet your eyes. My answer to your invitation, delayed in traffic, still stuck at the red light, but falls to the sidewalk light as a piece of paper wrapped around a beating heart. This bleeding masterpiece founders like a fish in a phone booth, skitters like a pigeon. And I can only tell you, no, I can only tell you I am busy tonight, searching for Pancho Villa, counting the money that I swear I had 5 minutes ago, trying to remember what city I'm in, what tacos taste like, how jazz sounds. I can only answer you with a naive earnestness that the poetry will keep me busy tonight, as if teenage girls didn't prostitute themselves every day, as if there was a room in the Mission Hotel big enough for the two of us. For 2 days, I wander the Mission District, looking again for your face, wondering if $5 earns me the right to know your name, the right to write a poem.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, in 2004, a couple of things. In 2004, I had the opportunity, I was asked to go to Venezuela, where Hugo Chavez was the president there, and the right-wing power bloc was trying to oust him. So I went as an international observer for a referendum. It was a pretty interesting experience. And on my way back, I went through Miami Airport. Anybody ever been to Miami? No, that was the only experience I've ever had in Miami. I feel like I have to sneeze. And in Miami, I had this very transformative experience that really sort of put some things into perspective for me. And from that, I wrote the title poem from my most recent book called Brown Unlike Me. Brown Unlike Me, the title of the book is of course borrowed from the author, John Howard, who wrote the book Black Like Me, which is this weird trip where this white guy dyes his skin and to try to see what black folks live like. Of course, that title is borrowed from Langston Hughes' poem, Dream Variations. So I took the title of the poem, called it Brown Unlike Me. Hey Curtis, come on in, you're late.
All right. Which one am I going to read?
You want to read that one right there? That's Curtis. So Brown Unlike Me. A couple of things real quick. Hugo Chavez was quoted as saying when he won the election, the referendum, which he believed was a U.S. influence attempt to get him ousted because of his influence, leftist politics in the region, and his control of the oil in Venezuela. He said that he had hit a home run as they call it, that landed on the White House lawn. So you'll hear that referenced in the poem. In Venezuela, I watched as the people, one other thing, there's a restaurant in Minneapolis, a Japanese restaurant called Ichiban. In Venezuela, I watched as the people of the nation stood at the plate, swung out in defense of their president, who won a democratic referendum by a majority of the majority, unlike our own president that same year. In defense of Chavez, millions of hands upon a single bat swing for the fences, un home run over the wall of the White House lawn. In Venezuela, as in Cuba, I am a junkie. I understand that. In Mexico, I'm lucky if I'm a pocho, a gringado, instead of a straight-up gringo. Because in these lands, the color of my passport is deeper than the color of my skin. Now, as I pass through Miami International Airport, International code MIA, I feel every letter of it, owning that I am made in America, but also feeling like part of me is missing in action. And somewhere on this journey home, if there is such a place, an invisible line is crossed. It may be at the point where sky meets earth, where earth meets sea, where skin meets sky, somewhere in the sacred trinity, I don't know where I cross a border, 2, 3. I hand in my tuxedoed passport of first world citizen in exchange for my second skin of second-class citizenship, the kind I wear like a favorite sweater, an old pair of tennis shoes that don't wear out no matter the miles I put on. It ain't my Sunday best, just the only thing clean in the closet. Deboarding the plane, I assume that here on U.S. soil I will be me again. I get to go back to being my complex, complete self and the white boy I'm traveling with, who gave himself his own hip-hop name. Taken from a distant red planet in a local Japanese restaurant, he will still be the same color of privilege. The man in the customs agent uniform resembles my Uncle Carlos, enough to warrant a double take with that OG Vato turned family man look. Complete with shaved head, goatee, tats, and work boots. Carlos the Customs Vato tells all the international travelers to divide into 2 lines, U.S. citizens and foreigners. And while nothing seems more foreign to me than a white guy with a Martian Japanese name, here I am standing with Mars Ichiban in the U.S. citizens line, because here and now the color of my passport is deeper than the color of my skin. And standing in the other line of this instant and uneven divide are people who look to me like family, some darker, some lighter, some of African bloodlines, some of indigenous. Most are some mixture of something, children of colonization, occupation, enslavement, of melanin, miscegenation, migration, all of them brown, yet their passports make them unlike me. When I get to the customs desk and the agent asks me for my passport and do I have anything to declare, I want to say, I have no passport to give you, America. It has been stolen from me over and over again. My name is Willie Brown Loman, but you must call me Memo. I'm late for the night job as a busboy in a Japanese restaurant, so can I please go now? What's that? You don't believe me? Okay, my name is Hugo Chavez, but you can call me Fidel. My purpose for going to Venezuela, to watch a game of baseball. On my way home, I plan to stop in D.C. to get a ball off the White House lawn. Those people in the other line, they're with me. Tio Carlos, the Customs Vato, too. I can vouch for all of them. They're family. And you can create all the lines you want. Cordon us off, impose and revoke citizenship. Wash the salt of the Caribbean Sea from our skin, the island sand from our hair, scold the trills from our tongues, criminalize our languages, anglicize our birth names, but I will not let you take from us our memory of family, home, language, blood. These things we hide very well amongst the pages of our passports, the one we keep just below the top layer of our skin, the only passport we ever need to know just who we are and where we come from.